Sanaya ko just straight T for technical foul.
By the way, the Sixers won today against UJ. All right.
I know,
So
right?
here we are. So who the heck are we? Is currently part of the Globally Balling Network. Most of our, if not all our shows, since day one of last year, is now uploaded on our YouTube page, which is the Globally Balling YouTube. So you gotta hit that subscribe button. It's a bell icon. Part of the Globally Balling podcast is the Globally Balling. Sorry, part of the Globally Balling Network is the Globally Balling podcast, a show where we take a surface level view of sports and opportunities around the world. Another show is called 5 Minutes with. 5 Minutes with, where they talk about the analysis of a sport, and the interview is just 5 minutes. The next show is all about a new league that's coming up. It's called Hang Time with Denise Densai. They currently have all the active volleyball players that will be playing in the PVL. And last but not the least, an eternity of basketball, where they have the oldies of basketball, the golden era of basketball, like guests such as Freddy Ubalde, Coach Tim Cohn, Pido Harencio. So why don't you also watch that? An eternity of basketball. So guys, episode
Yeah.
41. Episode 41. So
Dami na nito.
okay.
Crazy.
Who the heck are we? So our new episode for today is what the heck is futsal? Kayo ba? You guys, do you actually know what futsal is? I played it, so kind of know it, you know.
I played.
I
So
have
my classmates.
Clue.
I love it. I love the fact that Jay doesn't know. Zero clue.
I have zero clue. I have zero knowledge. I'm looking forward to this one to know something about that sport. All I know is
Yeah.
about kicking that football. That's it. But
Okay, good,
there's
good. So
football, then I don't know what this is. I
I played Salim
okay,
Pusa.
Claro.
So my classmates went on to play college ball and pro ball. So you see, I got to play with some future stars.
Nice. Okay, I got to play. I got to play when I was living in Australia, and it's actually a very fast game. You get tired easily. But guys, you know, the best person to talk about the development of futsal is gonna be on this show. He's currently the head of futsal development in the Philippine Football Federation. Why don't we have Mr. Kevin Goco? Kevin.
Oh, nice.
Yo.
Hi, Claudia.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Claro. Hi, Jay.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for
Thanks
coming
for
on.
having me.
Hello.
No worries. How's your dinner?
Oh, the dinner is very good. I just had a burger and some onion rings, but quite content and ready to explain what the heck is futsal, right?
Yeah, diba? I mean, you know,
He heard what I said. He heard what I said.
exactly. So, I know what futsal is. I played it before. But Kev, you know, being the head of futsal development in the PFF, could you please explain a little bit more on what exactly is futsal?
Futsal is, it's actually, according to FIFA, the world's fastest growing indoor sport, based on participation. Futsal is governed and regulated by FIFA, which is the governing body of 11-a-side football, or soccer, if you're American, which is more familiar to fans. But they also regulate a modality and a small-sided version of football, which we call futsal. And it's called futsal because it's a shortened way of saying football de sala, or in Spanish, football played in your sala, indoors, no? So futsal is not exactly football. It's a different sport to football altogether. It's played with 5 people,
Mhm.
5 aside, just like basketball. They have 2 halves, which are 20 minutes long. Just like basketball, they have accumulated fouls. So at the 5th foul, there's a penalty or a penalty kick, from a certain area on the floor. There's unlimited substitutions, there's timeouts. So in many ways, it's actually futsal, for those who don't know what it is, it's a hybrid of basketball, football, and I even would say a little bit of ice hockey, if you look at the tactics, right? So it's a very fast game. It was started in the 1930s in Uruguay. And like basketball and volleyball, its birthplace was in the YMCA, the Young Men's Christian Academy. So it took root in South America, became very popular in Brazil. In fact, it's a sport that most Brazilians start out playing before they play football. And the futsal game came under the FIFA umbrella around 1990 because FIFA saw the potential of the sport. And ever since then, it's the only small-sided version or modality of football that is governed and regulated by FIFA.
Oh wow! You know what I didn't know was it was actually called football in the sala.
Yep.
I didn't know that. I did not know that. That's something new to me, huh?
Living room nga unang pumasok sa isip ko.
It makes me feel good. I used to play whatever in the living room growing up as a kid, so it is okay.
You know what I played in the living room? You know that game? The floor is lava.
Oh, okay. I had my own version with friends too. Yeah.
Really? Oh
Yeah.
my god. Okay, so Kev, before I give it to Claro or Jay, what is it that you do to highlight futsal in the Philippines? You know, a lot of predominantly the sport here in the Philippines is basketball. After basketball, it's volleyball. After volleyball is football. You know, the regular 11v11. But there's nothing about futsal.
Yeah, well, that's what we're trying to change right now. That's actually my job, right? Is to make futsal more aware to Filipinos, to make the game more widespread, to increase participation, and eventually to have national teams, right? Futsal actually has a long history in our country. It can be traced back to the early 1980s. I understand 1982 or 1983, Adidas organized an indoor football exhibition game. And at that time, it was called indoor football. And it was participated by, I think it was UP Los Baños and the Armed Forces with some foreign guest teams. And then in the 1990s, as FIFA started to organize the game, it was promoted more by the Asian Football Confederation, which is the sort of like the umbrella governing football in the Asian region. So futsal really has a long history. I would say it started to take root in the early 2000s. It was promoted more by the PFF with help from the AFC. In 2007, our women's national futsal team actually competed in the Southeast Asian Games and won bronze in Bangkok. And if I'm not mistaken, that is the only time the Philippines has actually medaled in any modality of football, whether it is football or futsal. I may be corrected here. People are really following their history from the 70s and 80s. But from what I understand, it was the only time in our history that we medaled in SEA Games, whether it's football or futsal. So in 2007, our women's team got bronze. And then it started to take root after that in the Department of Education. So in the Department of Education, for some reason, don't ask me why, I sort of like don't agree with this approach. The DepEd said football should be for boys in the Palarong Pambansa and futsal for girls. No? So if you go to the Palaro and you watch their games, hopefully you'll be able to watch it after the pandemic. The official sport for girls is not football, but futsal. So because of that, you actually have, to this day, a high rate of participation of Filipinos playing futsal in the country, especially girls, no? And in the PFF side, we're just trying to drive more awareness for the sport. It's often mistaken for being, football played indoors, but it's not exactly that because it's a different sport altogether. But we hope that, we create more awareness and eventually create pathways. So the kids who are playing in our public schools, in DepEd, can have a pathway to represent their country in the national team, because FIFA and AFC organize international futsal tournaments. There's actually going to be a FIFA Futsal World Cup in Lithuania later this year. And we hope to qualify for that and do well, because in 2007, there's already a track record of success. Our ladies finished bronze. And as I understand it, that team did not have, how should I say, much support. So we hope with maybe this little bit support, we can maybe do well, maybe get silver or gold a few years down the line. No? So that's basically the history, a very brief history of futsal in the Philippines.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Claro?
Not to get too nitty gritty, but what made them say that football is for boys and then futsal is for girls? Because when you look at it again, these sports are similar. Futsal is just another version of football, in a nutshell, at least for the average Joe. So what made them maybe draw that line?
I really don't know, but my guess is it has to do with logistics and cost, right? If you have a football team, that means DepEd regional office or the DepEd would have to send 24 players to a tournament. Mm-hmm. That's just one team, right? You also have challenge with venues. When you talk about just for the boys tournament, football, I know in the past it has been so challenging to schedule tournaments in the Palarong Pambansa, given the number of games and maybe they only have one or two fields. In the past, you've had instances where football teams would play 2-3 games in one day, no? So when they looked at what sport should we introduce for girls, I think logistically it didn't make sense. Cost-wise, it didn't make sense to field a women's football team, given that the fact that if you have a women's football team, you have to send maybe 20 to 24 girls to that tournament. And, you have the logistics like, where are they going to stay? How do you manage their games versus the games that the boys play? So they decided, I think, I didn't hear this from DepEd, but I think that the reason why futsal is promoted is because in futsal, you only need 10 players for a team, and you only need to play 5 aside. And you can use indoor halls and gyms to be able to play the sport, which, in the Philippines, we have a lot of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Before I head to Jay, maybe, because I think logistics, that was like the magic word. Because way back, I remember Ray Johnson was saying with the Ascals, futsal is the key to promoting grassroots football, and maybe we can get our homegrown players from there. Because come to think of it, logistics, there's the indoor hall, and maybe I know you can come up with you can assemble a goal with PVC pipes, and then you have the ball and you're good to play. So I think that's the magic word that you said right there. Logistics is accessible for everyone. Jay?
No, the thing is, Kevin made a convenient excuse for DepEd. If DepEd actually haven't thought of a reason kung bakit futsal ang ibinigay sa babae, di ba? So, if DepEd has no idea about it, well, Kevin just gave a pretty good excuse for them to kung bakit futsal ang ibinigay sa babae, di ba? Pero, going to the technicalities of the game, since I've mentioned, I'm among the three of us, I'm not the football person here. So, basic difference ng rules dito. Because, come on guys, di ba? Ang reklamo ko sa football, especially when I'm playing FIFA, sa video game, di ba? I'm open for a goal, pero biglang pipituan ako ng referee ng offside. Offside? What? Ang hirap na maka-goal, offside pa. Diba? So, that's one thing that I want to know. Are the rules very as complicated as soccer or football, or paano ba? Mas simple ba to?
Well, the good news, Jay, is that in futsal, there's no offsides. So I think that solves a major problem that you have, no?
You could stand in the goal and just be a goalpost, Jay. You could be a goalpost right there. So kapag kunyari, like, di ba, Claro, you mentioned that off air that you could actually be you could just stand in the goal and
that is correct.
For the ball to come in.
Oh,
that is correct.
Kasi 'di ba? The purpose of whenever I play a sport, I always go back to the main purpose of the sport, diba? For example, if you have basketball, what's your purpose, diba? Put that ball into the hoop, diba? For
Yeah.
football, you have that purpose of putting that ball into the goal, diba?
Yes.
As a player, I'm just fulfilling that objective, diba? I just want to kick that ball to the goal. Now, if
May
my
isa-
player is way ahead, why on earth are you calling me a violation for offside, diba?
It makes it easier for people. No, Kevin, we lost you for a bit, but we were just discussing that Jay's purpose of playing football is to kick that ball inside the goal, and he can't do that
Oh,
during the 11v11. But during futsal, he's pretty happy that you could actually just stand in the goal and just make sure that the ball goes inside the goal.
oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So what
football,
else? Yeah, go ahead.
yes, futsal. There's really no restrictions, no, on what you can do.
mm,
It's really a formal version of bringing what people play on the streets, no, inside the
mm-hmm,
basketball court or
Mhm.
gym.
mm-hmm,
And that's why I also feel it has a lot of potential for growth in this country. Being a country where our fan preference is more geared towards faster games, higher scoring games,
mm-hmm. That's true.
games with no offsides. And futsal has all of that. It's more higher scoring than
Oh,
football. It's faster than football. It has more transitions than football. And in fact,
mm,
if I were to compare futsal to sport, I would actually think it's close. It's actually closer to basketball than it is to football.
mm.
Notwithstanding that people kick the ball, and
Right.
notwithstanding that it's governed by FIFA. So
Oh,
Right.
well,
It's the
the
up
thing
and
about
down. Go ahead, Jay.
the thing about basketball rules are more complicated than futsal, definitely, diba? All have that traveling violations, those 3-second violations, and all that, those 5-second ball hugging violations, diba? Pero for me, as a football idiot, if you're training me, where would you want to send me first to learn to become like David Beckham? Would you want me to play futsal first, or do you want me to play football first? The 11 aside first or the 5 aside?
yeah. So I guess sorry Jay, you're a bit choppy.
Oh,
So
yeah.
which
Saan ako dapat
sport?
mag-umpisa? Sa 11 aside or sa 5 aside? Kung halimbawa gusto ko maging David Beckham, 'di ba? Sa wala akong alam-alam sa football. Saan ako mag-uumpisa? Saan ako mas maganda mag-umpisa? Sa 11 aside or sa 5 aside sa futsal?
Well, I think the best way to start, and I hope I'm not biased here, would be futsal. No,
Mm.
futsal, because even in football, if you're starting out to play, all the technical experts would say that you have to start in a small-sided game. You cannot just start right off the bat playing 11 aside, because that's already too complex for somebody to process as a beginner. There's so much going on in an 11-side game. Like yun nga, you can't even understand offsides. Tapos you expect people to play with 10 other players, no? So the grassroots philosophy, even in football, is you have to start small-sided, 4-a-side, which is basically futsal, no? Because you have in futsal, it's 5 players, 1 goalkeeper, and four
Field.
players playing
Yeah.
outside the
Yeah.
goal. Yeah. So a good place to start would actually be futsal. And why futsal? Because in futsal, you're playing in a smaller court. You play with less players, and that means you touch the ball more.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
that's true.
lost him
That's
again.
true.
Okay.
I pretty agree on that one. Because considering too na mas maliit yung court ng futsal eh, 'di ba? I
Yeah.
mean,
Correct.
You could
come on.
actually play basketball.
If you're going to send me to a field right there, then I'm gonna go end to end on that one, depending on my position, 'di ba? It's gonna
Pero
be very
yung
taxing.
question ko, yung ba't si Beckham ang gusto mong maging Beckham? You could have
Oo nga.
chosen Pele, you should have chosen Messi, Ronaldo, si Beckham pa yung inuna.
I just
No,
I
you
can't
should
remember.
have. You should have gone Shrap
the
or
person on the
Chifi
top of my head.
Kaligdong.
Sorry.
Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cheffy.
Chifi and
No,
Shrak. Come on.
yeah.
Come on.
All right, Kevin, go ahead.
I can actually
Yeah.
say Stefan Shock, pero it's the first person that came into my head. Sorry.
Oh, yeah,
Kevin, go
okay.
ahead.
Yeah, so you in futsal you touch the ball more. I think there's studies that show that it's really it can't compare. If you're playing in the field, even 7 aside, 8, 9 to 11 aside, in futsal you touch the ball more times. In futsal, since the spaces are smaller, you're forced as a player to think quicker, to react to what's happening to you. And at the same time, in futsal, when you have the ball, just like in basketball, one turnover can lead to a goal. So that setup in itself already forces players to think that I have to defend and I have to attack and I have to stop the ball when there's a transition. So in football, kasi you turn the ball over, sometimes you can just wait, or then jog back. And you talk to many players who started out playing futsal and eventually football. A majority of them would say, once I go to the big field, it's so much easier because I have so much time on the ball. When I receive the ball, there's no situation or hardly any situation where 2 or 3 defenders are already pressuring me. In futsal, kasi that's normal. And there are really case studies to back this up. So you look at Brazil. Brazil being a traditional or the powerhouse of football in the world. They've won the most World Cups. In Brazil, almost all of their players, because they lack space, so again, logistical issue, because they lack space, many of them grow up in slums called favelas, they play futsal. And you can YouTube Neymar, you can YouTube Ronaldinho, you can YouTube majority of their stars, and you will see clips of them playing futsal until they are 13 years old. And that's why the Brazilians are so comfortable on the ball. They do crazy things with the ball that you wouldn't even imagine a regular player would do, no? So it's really bringing the expression of the streets, learning the game, playing in the backyards, in the schoolyards, up to an elite level. So that's what futsal is. And I think if you were to ask me where should the players start, I think they should start in futsal. If you guys are familiar with Barcelona's tiki-taka football.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I love that. Yeah.
Their coach, Pep Guardiola,
Yeah.
borrows concepts from futsal because their style is they play on the ground, quick movements, a lot of people moving around, positionless football. And that's what those are the same philosophies that futsal tries to teach young players, no? So it's a pathway that we've seen many players do. In fact, some of our youth team players here in the Philippines, a number of them have, well, not a number of them, but a few of them have started in futsal, and then they made the switch at age 14 to football. And of course, there's an adjustment period there. It takes maybe a year or two to learn how to play the offsides, right? I still don't understand offsides sometimes.
Very controversial.
Yeah.
Offside.
To be able to run at distance and to be able to kick the ball accurately, long balls across the field, that takes time to train. But if you already have the foundations of being very comfortable with the ball, with both feet, left and right, being comfortable to make decisions on a fly, that's a solid foundation for any football player as they mature and get older.
I think it's ingrained in my head, guys, because what Kevin's trying to say is, oh, futsal, the space is so tight. So when a futsal player's in the football field, it's like, oh, wow, I have an entire farm to use as space, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You can go left, you can go right, and oh, look, I still have space. I'm not yet by the touchline, right?
Yeah.
But speaking of that transition, maybe, Kevin, you think you can give us some names on some people who have been able to transition from futsal to football? Because maybe the kids listening now can go, oh, ayan si kuya or si ate. Nag-futsal mo na sila at nag-football na sila. So maybe they can aspire to be like these people.
Sama mo
Yeah,
na ako
so
dun.
internationally, I mentioned Neymar and Ronaldinho. They're some of the biggest stars. Or Ronaldinho was one of the biggest stars before. But locally, I think
Yes.
that the best example of that is Misag Bahadoran.
Right.
So Misag is a former Mr. Football. he made the transition quite late to football, actually. But if you do your research, he started out in futsal and was a futsal national team player before he played for the Ascals. And this it doesn't surprise me why he was so skilled. He was one of the most skilled local players on the ball because he had that futsal foundation already set. He trained futsal, I think, as a small kid because he's Filipino-Iranian. And in the Iranian community, anywhere around the world, futsal is like their that's like their basketball for Iranians, no? So they play it extensively wherever they are around the world. The Filipino-Iranian community plays futsal a lot. Misa grew up in that system. And it made him a good footballer later on. In fact, many people I've talked to in the past say that Misag was probably one of the best ever futsal players we had in the country. And even international teams thought very highly of him like when it came to futsal.
And he does have international goals to add to his name.
Yeah.
May susundan
Another
ako
one,
ng
Claro.
Yeah, and another one, you probably covered him in the PFL, was
Yeah.
MJ Libre. So
That's
MJ
what we were
Libre,
gonna say. Yeah, MJ Libre.
he came from Tondo, the Futsalero program. And as you know, they start out training in the streets, in the basketball court in Tondo. So very grassroots, very masa, very local. They didn't grow up playing country club football or private school football. But you already saw immediately the impact he made on the pitch, right?
Yeah.
And he played in college. He was a futsal player. He wasn't a football player.
I
Yeah,
have
who-
somebody to I have some people to look up to, diba?
You know
Yes,
that
you
my
do.
MJ Libre was fast. Remember, Claro's like, oh my gosh, this guy is amazing. He's quick, very quick with his feet.
Quadruple team, and he's like, okay, I'm just gonna spin through you guys.
He's
He didn't always.
yeah.
He
And
didn't always
you
have
can
to
already
release the
see,
ball. Yeah.
Claro, how the futsal format. If you play futsal every day from when you're 6 to 12, that's why an MJ Libre can do that. Very quick feet, can negotiate through 3-4 players because they see that every day on
Right.
on the futsal court.
And the thing
Alright.
and the thing na nakikita ko dito is if you were teammates, you're right. You'll have a lot of opportunity to touch that football. Mas marami pagkakataon para makasipa ka, do some skills, do some ball handling, di ba? And it's very beneficial for you as an individual to hone or to sharpen your football skills, di ba, Claudia?
Yeah, super. Okay, we talked a lot about the futsal, but I want to talk about your growth, naman, Kevin, on your journey in football. Tell us exactly what you've been doing outside of the PFF, outside of futsal, for your own journey in football. I know that you're an Arsenal fan. Woo! Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, we're not doing well at the moment, but I know that you studied overseas. We have some photos that Claro will probably show. Can you tell us more about your journey in football?
Yeah, so football, I started playing the game because of my parents' work. They were overseas workers. I grew up in Jakarta, so I was born in Bangkok, and I spent the first 6 years of my life in Indonesia. And in Indonesia, the number one sport there is football, and the Indonesians are really mad about the sport. In fact, it's
Crazy.
one of the most passionate countries I've seen when it comes to football. So growing up there at an early age, I was already exposed to the football culture. That passion that makes fans go mad and crazy about the sport. So I ended up playing soccer. That was my first sport growing up, and I fell in love with it. And eventually, to cut a long story short, my parents moved back to the Philippines when I was in high school. So I moved back here for high school. I went to the International School of Manila because I spent a lot of time abroad. And unfortunately here in the Philippines, if they see that you're good in sports, the athletics department will pressure you to play basketball. No, if they see that you're athletic. I don't know if that's the case now, no, but
Why?
playing football, kasi, um, I was quite fast. I had good footwork. I was very athletic before. So they said this guy would make a good point guard or a defender, initially defender in basketball. So so there, I mean, when I moved to the Philippines was actually when that shift from soccer to basketball happened. But I never stopped loving the sport. Football was always my first love, And after I graduated from high school, I studied in the U.S. In Boston because my sisters are based there. And there I focused on studies, but I always carried this love for the sport and felt very strongly that the Philippines had a lot of potential in football. So when I moved back to the Philippines after working in the States for a few years, I moved back in the Philippines, my mid-20s. I made it a personal mission to promote soccer or football. And at that time, it was right before the uh, Ascal's phenomenon, the miracle in Hanoi. And when I moved to the Philippines, I saw that from my time when I was in ISM, that really the majority of the people who were playing soccer and football in our country were actually those from the AB class who were well off, no? Because soccer programs at that time, you needed to have a field. And the only place to have access to a field is if you study in a private school like Ateneo, La Salle, San Agustin. If you're a regular Filipino who grows up in a regular community, you don't have access to that. So immediately I said, okay, I want to promote street soccer at that time. So I found the foundation. At that time, the foundation was called Gawad Kalinga. And in GK, I said, wow, there's an organized community here. They have a resident association. They have a daycare program for kids. Why don't we insert a street soccer program there? At that time, I didn't know it was futsal. I was just trying to promote football. And then as I started to learn more about the game, an old coach of mine, actually the late Rudy Del Rosario,
Yeah.
the late coach Rudy, who's the founder of Kaya,
Yes.
said, you know what, there's actually this sport called futsal that can be played on basketball courts, it can be played on the streets, it can be played anywhere. And that's how I started my journey there, because I really saw it as a key or a bridge for a regular Filipino who's not fortunate enough to go to an ISM, who's not fortunate enough to go to an Ateneo to play the game, no? Because that was the number one problem, to promote the sport was awareness, which I think we have a lot of now because of the ASCALs, but access to playing the game was really a problem. So to give access to thousands or millions of Filipinos, I focused in on Gawad Kalinga and grew the game within that foundation. We started with, I think, less than 10 kids in one community. And then it mushroomed to 22 communities, about 2,000 kids playing the sport. In fact, some of our youth players today in the PFF are products of that program. No, I mentioned they started out in futsal and then they played football. We have a solid partnership with Kaya Academy. So Kaya Academy has about 30-something scholars from Gawad Kalinga. So they take them from the streets to teach them the 11-a-side game. So that was really my journey. And then later on, I said, why don't we try to apply this formula to public schools? So then, I started to promote futsal in public schools. And then I saw the take-up was quite good. It was spreading because it was so easy to play the game for ordinary Filipino community to pick it up. And that eventually led me to the PFF, no? And came on board around 2017 in the PFF, trying to grow the sport. It's very challenging because, our country is so complex in terms of logistics. We're so many islands all over the place. Different cultures. So yeah, that's my journey, basically. From somebody who loved the sport and wanted to contribute in some way to Philippine football, and then along the way, I really saw futsal as a key. Futsal, I think you know this, Claudia, it doesn't really get much priority. But when the PFF said, Kevin, can you handle futsal? I didn't think twice because I knew early on I'm not saying it's a magic bullet solution, but it can help in a great way in promoting
That's right.
football.
That's right. Wow, Kev, thank you so much for giving us a rundown on your journey in futsal. So before we continue, we're gonna have to do a bit of a sponsorship time and promote again our sister shows. So, Claro, tunk, tunk, tunk. You're still looking for it. I
No,
could see it in the background.
I think Claro is mesmerized with the story
Yeah,
right
I
there.
know, right? So again, Who the Heck Are We is currently part of the Globally Ballin podcast. All our shows are now uploaded on our YouTube. Link is also found in the show's description. So like that subscription button and Globally Balling YouTube channel. Part of the Globally Balling network is the Globally Balling podcast, a show where we take a surface level view of sports and opportunities around the world. Another show is called 5 Minutes With. In fact, 5 Minutes With already has Nico Salva as part of their guest. Another show is actually going to be a very exciting topic is the Hang Time with Denise Tinsai, where they'll be talking more about volleyball. You could also listen to them on Spotify. And again, last but not the least, are very good in up Jay, I'm not gonna say it, are good friends from an
Come on.
eternity of basketball with Noel Zarate, Sid Ventura, and attorney Charlie Cuna. And Claro,
Yeah, so
your
Who the Heck Are We is also sponsored by homemadeph.com. So get the best meals from your homemade cooks. And again, you get to use the code Who the Heck for 10% off your purchase. So for example, just check out this is it banana walnut bread. I got so hungry thinking about it. I forgot the name. So Cheat Day Manila's
Merienda.
banana walnut bread. Get them on homemadeph.com. So use the code Who the Heck. Guests like Kevin and everyone and all of our listeners get to use that code. So it's all yours for the taking. Back to you, Claudia.
yeah. Before we go back to Kevin, I would just want to say that Sans Rival that you guys are selling in homemade.com. Oh gosh, it's so good. So Jay, you should order it. Kevin,
Use the
you're
code,
all
Jay.
yeah. You're all the way
Yeah.
in Iloilo. So next when you're here in Manila, you should try out the Sans Rival. No?
Yeah, I was going to ask
Claro,
how I can order that.
yeah, di ba? Yeah, la, you're in Iloilo, but that's
Oh,
okay. At least you're safe. You're
Oh,
safe
yes,
there.
you're safe.
yeah, gotta stay
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
Gotta stay
better
there
stay
for the
there.
meantime.
Yeah. So, Clara, you have any questions? I have a lot of questions, especially about Gawad Kalinga, no, and
Mhm.
the street futsal. Di ba, Kev, there's a World Cup, street World Cup futsal that's coming, or there's such a tournament like that. Di ba?
Yeah, so it's the Street Child World Cup. It's actually seven-a-side football, so it's not futsal.
Okay.
And it's organized by a group called Street Child United to highlight the plight or the difficulties that street children face around the world. So they organize a Street Child World Cup in conjunction with the World Cup. So every time there's a World Cup, they organize this side event for street children. And my good friends from Fair Play for All and the Futcaleros, the Tondo FC, they're planning to field the team to participate in Qatar, hopefully, COVID permitting, early next year, around the time of the World Cup.
Beautiful.
Sana.
In line with that,
Mm.
I think we also have the Homeless World Cup, I think for older people, and then another tournament really for futsal. They have the Futsal World Cup. I think it was hosted in Southeast Asia before with Thailand as the host.
Yeah. So the Futsal World Cup was hosted and conducted in Thailand. I think it was 2012, no, if I'm not mistaken, or 2014. And yeah, it's a different sport there. Like in Thailand, futsal is like their basketball. I mean, their stadiums sell out 25,000 fans. It's a totally different sport. Well, it's a totally different development level now compared to us. They also have a pro futsal league that's similar to the PBA. No,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
we hope to get there at one point. No, but I think we have to start establishing things muna in the base here.
And one of them, Kev, is opening up like a professional football league, futsal league here, no, in the Philippines. How would you, if you were to run it, how would you organize such a tournament for futsal?
Hmm. Good question, because it's hard to promote and establish a league when the sport is not very popular among fans here. It's very challenging, no, because the fans are the fuel and the lifeblood of any sport. Sponsors would only support you if they see that fans are watching, if they see
Mm.
that fans are tuning in. And if you don't have a solid fan base, it's hard to launch a professional league. So to answer your question, Claudia, the way I would do things is it's treated as a long-term process. Um, get futsal played more within the Department of Education and schools level. And within the near future, we're actually planning this. We would like, it's a target to have futsal in the collegiate leagues, the major collegiate leagues. And I'm talking about
Yes.
the NCAA and the UAAP. In fact, last year, it was almost a certainty that the UAAP would have had futsal as a demo sport for girls. I think 6 schools were going to vote for it, but the pandemic happened. So when things open up, we'd like to push that again, because you cannot have a pro league until you establish the lower levels muna. And I think a good stepping stone for a professional league is to have a very solid collegiate league in place. Just like what happens in volleyball, the fans fall in love with the players when they play for UST, Ateneo, and LaSalle, and they eventually follow and migrate with these players to the pro league. If you just start a pro league off the bat without doing the groundwork or without the roots being planted, it's going to be very difficult to promote because you don't have a fan base yet. So we want to have a very strong collegiate league, because there is collegiate futsal right now, but we
Yes.
want the major collegiate leagues like the NCAA and the UAP to have it, because what we're after is having the game televised.
Mm.
People being able to see, kahit if it's not on TV, as long as it's on streaming, that's good. And to be able to provide scholarships as an aspirational goal for many of the young girls who are currently playing futsal in DepEd. With those scholarships, with TV coverage, with a solid competition, hopefully with an Ateneo versus LaSalle futsal to excite things up, then
Mhm.
maybe you can use that as a stepping stone for a pro league in the future. I'm not saying a pro league is not important. It's very, very important to develop your national team and your players, but you have to do it at the right time. And when the certain ingredients are in place now, and the main ingredient I see that we need are fans.
Yep.
Yeah,
Before
that's
we
true.
carry
That's
on,
true.
maybe Kevin, to talk about like the work you do to promote the sport. The thing with futsal is we see it's an avenue to teach people or get people to develop well before transitioning to football. But at what point in time do you say, "Oh no, I think this player's better suited to play in the pro league of futsal?" Maybe in the case of other countries like Thailand, you said they have a pro league for futsal, they have a pro league for football. So when do you draw that line there in the junction and go, this player belongs here, football, this player belongs there, futsal?
That's a very good question,
Yeah.
Claro, because it's actually a debate we have internally in the
Yeah,
PFF.
we do.
Um,
Yeah,
Interesting.
I was just gonna say we do.
um, but let me roll it
Healthy,
back.
Claro spilling
healthy.
some
Yeah,
beans. Claro
great
spilling some...
question. No? Great question, because to be honest with you, there's no clear answer to that. There's no definitive answer for it. But if you were to ask me, right, and just to roll things a bit back now, uh, part of the problem in futsal promotion is that we say futsal is a development tool for football. And why is that a problem? It's a problem because futsal is a sport in its own right. So if you continue to say futsal is a development tool for football, it will never get the priority it needs to develop as its own sport. In the same manner that 3-on-3 basketball was able to really develop and become an Olympic sport after 12, 13 years of existence. Amazing growth in 3-on-3 basketball. So futsal needs to establish its own identity as an exciting sport in its own right. An exciting sport where people like Jay can say, this is great, there's no offsides here. I want to follow futsal, right?
You're Jay. You're the guy.
That's exactly how
But-
I call it.
But if you promote futsal solely as a development tool for football, you will always have a problem in growing the game because it will always get a lot less priority than football. No? And I truly believe futsal as a sport in its own right has tremendous potential, the way basketball, volleyball, and other indoor sports engage so many fans. No? I mean, I watched a futsal game in Spain, their top professional league. Their stadium, their basketball stadium was packed with fans. There was chanting. It felt like I was in a UAAP game. Mas exciting pa nga yung futsal game compared to watching Messi on the 11-a-side field.
Moran.
Because I watched the futsal game of FC Barcelona, and I watched the football FC Barcelona team. And the futsal game for me was more exciting. I didn't know the players. I knew who Messi was. But the atmosphere of being in a contained stadium, thousands of fans shouting, cheering, playing their drums, it was a better atmosphere than being in a stadium with 110,000 fans, most of them tourists, who were there to see Mickey Mouse. In Barcelona's case, Mickey Mouse was Lionel Messi. No, so no, I mean I'm being honest here. No? So like, just to roll things back, there will be a problem if you say futsal is solely a development tool for football. But you can say that because it truly is. It truly is. It can be a pathway for football, and that's how I started out in the sport. Now, where do you draw the line? That's a very good question because in drawing the line, a developed or the standard saying of experts is that you should draw the line at the age of 13, 14 years old because football and futsal are different sports. They're complementary, but they're different. They also say you should draw a line for the coaches and the referees. So a football coach cannot coach futsal games, and the same thing applies for a referee. A football referee cannot referee futsal matches. But in the Philippines, since futsal is not developed yet or as developed as football, and I would even argue football is not yet that developed, if you impose that hard division now, you're going to run into a lot of problems because nobody would want to referee futsal games because they say, you know, there's a football tournament this weekend and I can't referee to earn money on the side. But there's this rule from the federation saying that I cannot referee a football match. Same thing goes with players because nowadays in the Philippines, many football players play futsal and futsal players play football. If you're going to tell MJ Libre, sorry, you can't play in the PFL because you're a futsal player, then that's killing football.
That's right.
The same thing with futsal. So it only makes sense to have that clear division when you're a developed futsal and football country like Spain, like Portugal, like Germany, because they already have things in place, no? But if you don't have that in place, you have to allow people to move, shift, and migrate. No? Now, there's this debate because you have hardcore futsal fundamentalists who say, no, kung futsal, dapat futsal all the way. The same thing with football. You have full fundamentalists who say, no, like futsal is a waste of time, no? Like why are you wasting your time playing futsal? It's in fact going to ruin your skills. So there are some coaches who believe that futsal actually ruins your skills on the football pitch, which I don't really buy into, no? So to answer your question, it's a debate, but my personal opinion is not to have that division yet.
Pero, Kev, one quick question.
Very good
Makasingit lang ako. And I think Claudia can chime in on this one.
Very good
Because-
answer, Kevin. Yeah.
Because it is a debate. I agree. And you have that premise. I agree with your premise 100%, totally. Pero you have to look it at the present situation of football din, 'di ba? Ang kilala pa ngayon yung 11 aside, 'di ba? I think Claudia can chime in on this one, but the tiebreaker on that debate is or the players themselves. The players, isama mo na yung officials dyan. So, I'm gonna ask you two guys. I know, Claudia, you're hosting this episode, pero where do you think the bias of the players is right now? Especially to those guys that played futsal and football. If you
Where
let the
will they
players make a
go?
choice, saan sila pupunta? Sige, go ahead, Claudia.
That's a very tough question because
Uh,
because you know
players vibe. Oh.
players because there's a PFL, they'll go
Mm.
towards the PFL
Mhm.
because there's a professional league. That's the issue that I think Kevin is also trying to raise. If there is a futsal league, if there is a Philippine futsal league, I think there's going to be a harder decision for players on which they'll go through. But because there's a the PFL, that's where they're looking at. I don't know, Kevin, if that's what you think
Oh.
Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
I actually think the answer to that question is not difficult at all. I think if you ask any player, they would say football.
Yeah.
Because football in the international world is such a behemoth. It's the number one sport in the globe. And when kids see Messi, Neymar, the UEFA Champions League, the English Premier League, that's all. That's all aspirational for them. That's very inspiring for them. So they would naturally gravitate. If you ask any kid to say they wanna play football, no. So yeah, I think football would always be the number one for most players. But I also know that there are some players who say that I like this sport better. I like futsal better. It's faster. It's more sanay for my body type, no?
Yeah.
And even some countries put more of emphasis and priority on futsal. So like Vietnam and Thailand, I mentioned their futsal programs. They realized that or a few years ago or several years ago that if we focus on futsal, we'll actually make a World Cup and we'll actually do really well and get top 20 ranking, no? Football is more difficult. And they also realize for Asians, especially Southeast Asians, our body type is mas sanay for futsal, I think, no?
Mas mabilis
Futsal kasi,
Mas
it's still in
mabilis tayo.
football.
Oo.
In football kasi, there's still an advantage if you're strong. You don't have to be tall. Of course, it
Yeah.
helps to be tall. But there's advantage if you're, big, physical. You're able to run long distances and ride so many tackles off of you. So there's still a premium on that. In futsal, if you try to run long distance, you're already out of bounds na eh. So there's really a premium on quickness, speed. And Thailand, Vietnam, and Southeast Asian countries really saw that. Uy, if we focus on futsal, we can actually do well and qualify for the FIFA Futsal World Cup.
Yeah.
Good question,
I agree.
Jay. Very, very good
Got it.
question.
Yes, I got that one.
Before we carry on, I think also in futsal, there's no heading of the ball. Everything's on the ground. So that helps Southeast Asians as a whole because we're not the biggest.
There is heading, Claro. There is heading there.
There is, right? In
There
futsal?
there is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Pero
There
not,
is.
I guess, not as much kasi
Ayun. Okay.
the ball is heavier, so it doesn't
Oo.
really fly as much, no?
It
Okay.
hurts.
And the surface is more flat compared to a pitch, di ba? Kasi sa pitch there's that small room para pag sinipa mo, lilipad talaga yung bola. Pero dito sa futsal, since flat yung ground, di ba? I don't know. Pero
Okay.
No, yeah.
but that's a very good point regarding sa players vibe on where they wanna go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Very
that's
good,
one
very
challenge actually.
Thanks
Actually-
for shedding light on that. Yeah, because I
Yeah,
just
it's
thought
very-
there were
Oo.
times where some guys in school were like, no, we're not going to head that ball because it's super heavy. So I just thought, that's
It
not part of
hurts.
the game. It
hurts.
hurts.
It
So I
hurts.
thought it's really perfect. So now we know that you can head it too, but we know that
But
futsal now, it's more on the ground, right?
But there's three versus three. You can't head. You can't use a header for 3 versus 3 futsal. There is a 3 versus 3 futsal. So I'm not sure if you, unless you really could, I
Yeah,
don't
Have
know.
the
yes.
tallest player.
Talaga. Oh.
Well, 3v3 is not really official, but it's a format that
Mm-hmm.
trying to promote, especially for younger kids.
Mm.
And you can
Mm.
play 3v3 on a half court basketball court. You don't even need a basketball court. And the plan is eventually to have some showcase of that in the malls, no, in the malls here to promote awareness of the sport, right?
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be
Claro?
really cool.
But we see that futsal can be life changing. It can be a sport in its own. It can be a development tool. But could you tell us perhaps about your efforts with the Henry V. Moran Foundation? Because we see in the online space that that's something you're involved with, of course, in promoting the game.
Before I came on board with the PFF, I was involved with the Henry V. Moran Foundation. So the Henry V. Moran Foundation, like what the heck is that, right? it's it's a foundation started by former national team player Danny Moran, who played for the Philippine national football team in the 1970s, together with Mr. Nonong Araneta. Mr. Danny Moran, after his playing days, started a small bake shop that grew quite successful. The bake shop was called Red Ribbon. And then eventually, after selling Red Ribbon to Jollibee, he got involved with the Amicis and Caramia gelato chain. So after football, he became an entrepreneur. So he was a businessman, but then he decided that he also wanted to give back to football. And he formed the Henry V. Moran Foundation to assist nonprofit organizations to set up their football programs. So the initial foundations that they worked with in helping develop their programs were actually Gawad Kalinga and Tuloy sa Don Bosco. So when I was involved with GK, I was already involved in some way with the Moran Foundation. No? And for many years, the Moran Foundation helped organize the pioneering or the initial team for the Street Child World Cup. They also helped put together the first team for the Homeless World Cup in 2008. And after being involved in helping out foundations, they saw the growth and success of football or futsal in Gawad Kalinga. So Mr. Moran said, why don't we try to apply this formula to the public schools? And that shift came in 2016. And it was a program that is called Liga Escuela. And Liga Escuela is really a futsal promotion program in the Department of Education public schools. So the first year, we worked with 11 schools, 11 public schools. They liked it. The work involved organizing, coaching, training workshop for the PE teachers, having them form teams. Then when they form teams, we gathered them in, initially it was a festival in LaSalle Green Hills. So all the courts in LaSalle Green Hills, the big dome court, the courts near the field,
Yeah.
we're all playing futsal in one big tournament. The kids loved it. The schools loved it. So in year 2, they recruited other schools within the division. And from 11, it became 68 public schools.
Wow.
By the 3rd year, and this is why I believe so much in this futsal game, DepEd NCR took notice and said, we want this division-wide. We want to have this division-wide because we want to prepare our girls for Palaro. And this is a good grassroots program. So by year 3, the program reached 312 public schools. And the pickup was phenomenal because if you talk to the teachers, they say, I don't need spikes. I don't need goals. I don't need fancy equipment. I don't need 24 players. All I need are just 7 to 10 players. And we can, most importantly, practice in our school. Almost every public school has a basketball court or a covered area where they can play. So that was why the schools bought into futsal. And we eventually had to organize leagues. So we organized leagues within Manila, Mandaluyong, to have an elimination to bring them to LaSalle. By the third or fourth year, Sir Nonong Araneta attended the event. And I think he was blown away because a few weeks later, we were called into the office of the PFF and said, look, we want you to promote futsal. There wasn't any guarantee or promises of support, but we didn't think twice about doing it because my experience from GK foundations and public schools show that there's tremendous potential to be able to use this sport to create a large impact among kids here in the Philippines and eventually create a national team that can make our country proud.
Crazy. Wow. And I'm blown away with how much information that Kevin knows. I'm actually part of. I'm blessed to be part of the futsal show called the Futsal Show Philippines, and which is carried by the Moran Foundation. So
we're blessed to have you also, Claude.
Yeah.
So there there's the Moran Foundation, and Jay, Kev. Just to let you know, Jay is actually a hype man in the 3x3, right? So he does the announcing on 3x3.
I can't rap.
Right?
I can't rap.
You can't rap.
Jay,
I can't rap. I can't rap, but it's the least I can do. I mean, because when it comes to 3x3, it's a bit more loose eh. Pwede mo ikwento yung exactly nangyayari dun sa half court eh, to the
Exactly.
audience.
So,
and the players
yeah.
can hear it. So
Yeah.
with futsal, I think, or I don't know, can you do that? Can you do the same thing? Di ba
That's what
madidistract yung mga
that's what I'm
players?
gonna say, Jay.
in fact,
Oo.
Pwede.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact,
Go,
it's
Kevin.
funny you
Cool.
mentioned that, Claudia.
Yeah.
Because I really, because I took a sabbatical last year. I took my master's in sports last year. And I realized while I was studying that the way futsal was being promoted globally was probably not the most optimal approach in developing the sport. And why do I say that? Because futsal has been around since 1990. It is not yet an Olympic sport. Meanwhile, I look at 3-on-3 basketball, and in a course of 15 years, it's now an official Olympic sport where somebody who wins a gold medal in 3x3 is on the same level, assuming LeBron wins a gold medal in 5v5 basketball.
That is true.
And it's tremendous growth. And I think the reason why that's the case is because FIBA, or the people growing the 3x3 game, marketed it in a different way. Futsal kasi is marketed the way football is marketed. Very traditional. Before the match, we have that na 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 na. It's just like
Anthem,
football,
yes.
but I mean, if you're gonna do that, you're always gonna be second fiddle to football. Whereas what FIBA said, look, let's do this an entirely different approach. Let's have the shoutcasters like what Jay does. Let's have hip hop music in the background. Because they understood that 3x3 is an urban street game. Futsal has to be treated like that for it to grow internationally. And I actually have been studying the 3x3 model because I think futsal on a global level has a lot to learn what FIBA did with 3x3.
That's exactly what I wanted to say, Jay, is that
Oo.
the phenomenon of 3x3 basketball went up because of its how they market it. The way they foul, the way they have a DJ. So
Yeah,
I was thinking, Kev, di ba? But they could do that with 3v3 futsal, no?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's something.
Or
they-
even yung 5v5 futsal can be like that. Eh.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly.
Because if you watch futsal games now, it's so traditional. There's nothing wrong with that, But it's like
Yeah.
they took what they do in football and they tried to make it bite size for futsal.
Hindi
Futsal has
dapat.
to be different. We need to have the DJ there. We need to have excitement. It needs to be marketed differently.
Kumbaga, the package. It's a totally different package. Hi, coach.
Just like-
That's our resident mascot right there. Oh. Pero, yeah, it's a good thing. Kasi, well, on a surface level, for me, basketball, there's 3x3, the baby brother. For volleyball, there's beach volleyball, the baby brother, and another baby sister, which is the snow volleyball, diba? So for me, on a surface level, if you have football, the baby brother definitely will be futsal. Pero I know it's a challenging part to promote it to a level na parang 3x3. There's a international professional team there. It's an Olympic sport. For futsal, it's difficult for it to promote it to a level. Pero I'm seeing other things like, for example, you're doing it at grassroots level, di ba? One question is, the kids seems to be very supportive of it, very appreciative. Gusto ng mga bata, di ba? How about their parents? Okay ba sa mga, for example, yung mga parents talaga bang pinupush nila na, ay sige, gawin nyo to, susuportan namin yan. Kasi the push of the parents would be, I think, very important too, di ba?
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, I didn't hear the question, Jay. Jay's a bit happy. I just heard parents, no?
Yeah,
the
the
yung push
parents,
ng
yeah.
parents. I think that's very important too. Kasi, for example, yung mga, kung merong mayayamang parents din na nagustuhan din ng futsal, for sure, they'd be the one to, I mean, put up a league or sponsor something, di ba?
Yeah. Sorry, like what's the question?
The
Oh.
parents, is there, would the parents be supportive for kids,
to the cause.
especially to
To
go
the
to the
Oh.
cause of futsal?
Oo.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, any sport where the kids are engaged, are happy, and they have fun, and I think any parent would be behind that, no? And I see why futsal can't have the same effect. In fact, we do see that, no? Parents in the public schools we work with, I'm not saying all of them, but a majority of them are supportive of these futsal activities. In fact, the public schools are very supportive of it, because the problem in our public schools is that they don't really have developed sports programs in place. What the public schools really have in the Philippines at this point is they just...
I think we lost Kevin for a bit there.
Yeah,
Pero
We lost Kevin.
Yeah.
I think ang gustong sabihin ni Kevin doon is, ang nakikita lang ng mga public schools is, basta athletic yung bata.
Basketball.
At kung yung ano yung, at kung yung ano yung mainit na sport, basketball. Kasi here's the premise that I'm thinking.
Ayun na.
Since futsal is having some very big
Sorry,
difficulty.
yeah.
Kevin said.
There you
Kevin,
go.
you can continue first before I share kung ano yung pumasok. Something radical came into my mind.
Yeah. So, to the public school system, kasi they only really have sports when it's palarong pambansa season. But in other parts of the year, there's nothing. What we're trying to promote in the futsal program is to have a year-round activity for the kids, right? And we have testimonials from teachers, from parents, to say that, now that you have futsal and it's being conducted on a regular basis, it gives an incentive for my kids now to go to school. And I'm supportive of that, right? The kids now want to go to school because there's something there for them to look forward to and to play. So even for the parents in the Liga Escuela, I didn't mention this earlier, we organize an exhibition between them. So we form teams with the teachers and the parents to play each other. So they get the feel.
Fun.
They get a feel of what their kids are going through, no? Or what their students are going through. And you know what? The parents and the teachers actually have fun playing the game. And it's also a lot of fun because you see the kids and their students on the side laughing at their teachers and parents, no? Like while they're trying to play a futsal competition. So when we had a Liga Escuela, before the championship match, we actually did an exhibition where we asked the parents and the teachers to join and play against each other. And like many of them didn't even know how to kick and run. But it was hilarious, no? Imagine the kids making fun of their teachers while they tried to kick a ball into a goal. That was fun. So, I mean, like all jokes aside, but that really it brings buy-in from the parents' side, no? because they say, oh, this is a fun sport. Masayang futsal eh. It's fun. So
Wow.
You see,
So yeah. Go, Jay.
no,
Sige.
come to think of it, see, Kevin mentioned that they've already made thousands of kids get involved dito sa futsal. Pero if you think of it, what if those isama mo dun yung mga apo na ni Millionaire A, ni Billionaire B, ni Tycoon C, and they be able to see their children or their grandchildren enjoy the sport, then those rich people guys can make the initiative na, oy, umpisa natin to. Malaking potential ito. And since the program is already laid out, and Claudia has been a very big advocate of this grassroots development na eventually would turn into really, really good players, national team level. Diba? Like you said, the potential is there, diba? It's
That's
just
right.
a matter of people getting together to make the initiative to really grow the sport and make it really beneficial to everybody in all aspects, diba?
That's right. That's right. It's true. All right. So Kev, thank you so much. I mean, it's wow, we're already an hour and 11 minutes. We just we I think we already know a lot on futsal, you know, Claro and Jay. So
I'm blown
Kev,
away.
do you wanna
I'm blown away.
yeah, do you wanna promote say anything, your shout out to our listeners, to our fans regarding futsal?
yeah, so thank you guys for highlighting or giving us the platform to speak about futsal. I feel there's tremendous potential in this sport to help football, but to also develop as an exciting sport in its own right, where Filipinos can do well. As I mentioned earlier, we have the track record already. We got a medal with a team that was not very well supported. But the sport can only grow if you guys here in the show continue to give the platform for us to speak about it. And hopefully this would create momentum and some support to lead us to the point. So the medium-term target is to do well internationally so we can create a higher profile for the sport and eventually get more support from, I guess, the billionaires or the millionaires out there. So continue to support futsal. We're not here to fight football, so that's another issue. We're here to help football. No, really, I'm serious when I say that because
Yeah.
I
in
agree
the
on that
Philippines,
one.
football without futsal, football cannot grow. The same thing with futsal. If futsal doesn't have football, then it also can't grow.
That's true.
Here in the country. So thank you again, guys.
Very well said. And you know,
Thank
your
you.
answers blow so many good
Yeah.
answers, Kevin. And thank you for having us for having us in your show. No, thank you for being in
Thank
our
you for
show.
gracing
And
our show.
yes, that's right.
Definitely.
Thank you,
Even-
Jay,
even
and I hope Jay you'll understand offsides eventually.
No, forget it. I'm futsal. There's too much
That's
knowledge in my head right
Yeah.
now that I don't wanna incorporate offside. Futsal, sige, magkita tayo dun.
and then Claro could stand the goalie, right?
Klaro, sumama ka na sa akin. Doon na lang tayo.
No, I think if Jay's gonna be a hype man, he's gonna keep hyping up. Ah, my goal. Kita mo, walang offside kasi dito sa futsal. He's gonna keep pushing and pushing that. I imagine Jay. Yeah, I'll play
Yeah.
again. I'm not gonna do my MJ Libre or Misa because I can't. So I'll just be a keeper.
Yeah.
Maybe somewhere down the line, Jay can hype up futsal, no, in the future. If we
Yeah.
think of the format, no. If we think of the format.
You bet.
That's right. Then you have to
we
understand
better
football
talk. We
talaga.
better.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay,
So,
so guys,
Thanks, Claro.
Thanks.
Thanks, Claudia. So,
thanks,
Thank you, Kevin.
Kev.
Thanks, Kev. Fun show.
Yeah. That was good.
That was
diba?
fun. That was
I was
fun.
blown away. I was blown away.
Diba?
Oh,
So yeah, and for me, I love futsal. I played it, like I said, I played it in Australia. It's fast and it's fun. It's fun for me. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, all that end-to-end action and all the goals, that's something that appeals to Pinoys because Pinoys love their numbers. When you think of it, the sports they love all have high numbers and stats and this and that. And that's something futsal has. And we see that there's potential. they get into futsal, maybe they can get into football. Down the line, maybe we can have that futsal pro league, and go figure. We'll compete on the international level, right?
Oh, def.
Oh. Pero the thing is, dito na-discover natin, I think for the first time here in the 41 episodes, we've discovered how a sport is built up from the day it was discovered to bringing it
Yes,
up to Olympics level. We saw how
that's right.
3x3 happened. We are seeing futsal happening at our very eyes right now, diba?
Yes,
So yeah, that's one thing I've learned so much, how to build a sport.
that's
And I
right.
love this episode. I love this one.
It's so informative. It got a lot of
Yeah,
information
yeah.
coming up. So
Mhm.
um, before we actually bring back Kevin, I think we're gonna have to again promote our wonderful sister shows, you know,
Yeah.
and again, all right. So again, the Globally Ballin Network actually picked us up a couple of weeks ago. So who the heck are we is now on the Globally Ballin Network. So please subscribe and hit that bell icon. Part of the Globally Ballin Network is the Globally Ballin Podcast, a show where we take a surface level view of sports and opportunities around the world. Another show is called 5 Minutes Win. I believe they already have 5 episodes in, and one of them is with Nico Salva. Coming up soon, you'll be seeing on your televisions is the PVL. And the best show that you could actually listen to about the updates on volleyball is Hang Time with Denise Tensai. And our last but not the least, an eternity of basketball with Sid Ventura, Noel Zarate, and attorney Charlie Kuna. All right, so that's wraps up episode 41
Yeah.
regarding futsal. So what the heck is futsal? Better watch the show.
Now you know,